Welcome to my review for The Gallows from 2015. This is a film about a group of youngsters who get trapped in a high school late at night, and a malevolent spirit is picking them off one by one. All the doors are locked so they can't get out. The reason why these kids are in the school so late is because they want to trash the theatre set of this school play, which is going to be happening the following night. One of the vandals is actually in the play, but he's completely lost his bottle in terms of being in this play. And adding to his anxiety is the fact that this girl he's got a crush on is his co-star, and he's worried that if he goes ahead with being in the play and he sucks, then this girl won't want to know him anymore. So his new plan, or at least it's his friend's plan and he's just going along with it, is to trash the set the night before, get the play cancelled, and his hope is that this girl will then get all tearful and fall into his arms and he'll be the shoulder to cry on, etc, etc. It's a ludicrous plan. I mean, it's got no chance of working, but it's believable that a teenager might think that it could work. So at this point, let me just say that this is a found footage film. I know that that's not for everybody, but personally, I quite like this particular subgenre. I've seen lots of good found footage films. I don't go out looking for them. They just seem to fall into my lap from time to time. This particular one was directed by Chris Lofing and Travis Cluff, and I couldn't tell you anything more about them because they don't have a wiki page. Curiously, a lot of the actors in this film use their own forenames for their character names. It's kind of weird. So, for example, Reece Mishler plays Reece Hauser. Pfeifer Brown plays Pfeifer Ross. Ryan Shoes plays Ryan Shoes. This guy's not even bothered to change his surname. From what I can gather, this started out as an extremely cheap indie film, and then I think at some point the big horror companies got involved, like Blumhouse and New Line, threw a load of money at it to kind of tart it up so that it was suitable for release in the theatres. But some of the more amateur tendencies, like actors using their own names for characters, have remained in place. It reminds me a bit of Paranormal Activity. I think Mika and Katie, those characters, those were the names of the actual actors playing them. It's as if sometimes when actors are in a film for the first time, and because it's an indie film, they've got some creative input as to the character names, they think to themselves, oh, this might be my only film ever, therefore I'll just play myself, make myself immortal. It's not what I would do if I was going to be in a film, but there you go. This film has a great opening. So this isn't the first time that the school has put on The Gallows. They did it 20 years previously, but this kid, Charlie, accidentally died on stage because his character had to be hung at the gallows in the last scene, but something went wrong with the mechanism on the scaffolding and he ended up dropping and breaking his neck and dying. And we actually get to see this through the lens of some old camcorder footage taken by one of the parents. It gives you a real jolt right at the start of the film. In the first 30 seconds, it really grabs your attention. And then we flash forward to the present day, where The Gallows is being performed again, possibly as a kind of tribute 20 years on, but obviously the ghost of Charlie might not be too happy about that. I do really enjoy the sort of opening 20 or 30 minutes in this film during the daytime, as we get introduced to most of the characters. We get to see a lot of scenes that take place showing people setting up the stage props and messing around in the costume room. I used to act in theatre myself back in the day, so any kind of horror which is set in and around a kind of theatre setting is always going to appeal to me. I said the same thing, I think, during my Phantom of the Opera review. When we get to the featured attraction of the evening, so to speak, though, with the four main characters in the school at night, the atmosphere is really great. There is a lot of jump scares and boo moments. I know some people don't like that type of horror, but no two scares feel the same in this for me. I think the geography of the school is very good. You know, it's very mazy. The characters have to go down all kinds of random corridors and underground basements, and there's a section up in the rafters above the actual stage as well. They spot a duct at one point. It's a bit like a hospital in that regard. It's a great horror location, a school. There's lots of good production design. So I don't know what it's called, the big kind of scenery board that's behind the stage in a theatre. There's probably a technical term for it, but the one in this film looks very creepy. It sort of reminds me of Midsummer or The Wicker Man. There's a few other things that reminded me of various medias as well. There's a classroom scene earlier on in the film which reminded me of the video game Life is Strange, just in terms of the design. And there's also this thing where the characters in this develop rope marks on their necks not long before they're about to die. And that reminded me of another game I used to play, Fatal Frame, on the PS2, or Project Zero, depending on which region you're in. The deaths in this are very well staged. There's not many of them, but I really liked the sort of camera angles that were used for the kills. They were very creative. I'm not going to talk too much about the finale. There is a big twist near the end, but I can imagine that maybe not that many people who are watching this review have actually seen the movie, because it's not one of the more well-known found footage films, I don't think. So I'll let you discover the twist for yourself, but it's very clever. It's not just randomly thrown in there to pull the rug out from under your feet. It does feel like a very well thought out end switcheroo, and it ties in nicely with everything you've learned throughout the film up to that point. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the characters now, or certainly the main ones. 3 out of the 4 of them are absolutely fascinating. It would be easy, by the way, to dismiss these guys as vandals and feel like you can't get behind them. But I just kind of look at them as youngsters making their mistakes. And I think if the horror hadn't have come along in this film, they all would have paid in some way for their actions the following day. Reece would have almost certainly blown it with his crush Pfeifer, and Ryan and Cassidy probably would have got into trouble as well. Maybe that would have brought some strain on their relationship, etc., if Cassidy even kicked off the cheerleading team or whatever. As it is, though, they pay a lot more dearly before we get to that point. Reece's look of horror when Pfeifer turns up to the theatre and catches him destroying the set is just absolutely priceless. It's the biggest look of horror in the movie, but I'm glad the actor played it that way, because, you know, when you're a teenager, your emotions are all over the place, and it's easy to think that for a lad, it would be far worse to find out that his crush didn't fancy him or wasn't interested in him anymore than finding out that a ghost was about to kill him. Ryan is somebody who I could easily believe a lot of people would find annoying if they only watched this film once. I've seen this film 3 times, and I found his humour much funnier the second and the third time, but I do think his really erratic way of walking around the school with his camcorder gives the film some much needed energy in the first act. I'm a little bit confused by his motivations in terms of why he's so keen to drive forward this plot of destroying the set. Reading between the lines, I suspect that he secretly fancies Pfeifer as well in this movie, and he's a little bit jealous that Reece has a possible avenue into getting with Pfeifer, but I'm not entirely sure. As for Pfeifer herself, in this film, the kids who are in the theatre are sort of portrayed as nerds who aren't very good looking, and the football crowd and the cheerleaders are all presented as sort of the beautiful people. Now, in real life, of course, you get good-looking people in theatre, you get not so good-looking people who play football. But I think the reason why this film has done this way is just to make Pfeifer really stand out amongst everybody, because she's a beautiful young woman who's not doing the usual cheerleader thing in this school. She's like, you know, acting in school plays and taking it really seriously. So it just kind of makes it more understandable that Reece would be totally obsessed with her, and I think Ryan as well. Cassidy's probably the least interesting person in the quartet that we end up following in for most of the movie, but she's played by a very good actress, so I still enjoyed that performance anyway. So to sum up, I really enjoy this movie. It really gets me thinking about its world and its characters, and from a scares point of view, it's a great little 80-minute horror ride. It's crossed my mind that I don't really have a negative section today. There's nothing about this film I would really change, except for possibly making it longer, going into depth a little bit more about the characters, not because they're bad as is, just because I enjoyed them that much. I would have liked a bit more on that side of things to go along with the horror. But it's a great little film. It's thoroughly recommended if you like found footage. If you don't, maybe it won't be for you. But I enjoyed it so much after my first viewing, I went out and bought the Blu-ray. It's a very good release. It's got a 10-minute documentary on there about the making of the film. It's also got the original indie version of this, which existed before the studios came along and touched it up for theatre release. I've not actually watched that yet, because every time I sit down to watch this film now and again, I just end up watching the normal version because I enjoy it that much. But at some point, I'm going to have to check that out. Apparently, it's got a completely different ending. Right, let's get to the bag of terror and find out what sort of score I'm going to give this. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 bloody axes out of 5. An excellent score. I thoroughly recommend this film. Maybe you will too. And there's actually a sequel. I'll be back soon to review that one as well. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.